Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you can hear me clearly with this microphone. Yeah? Welcome to the third semi-final of the Microhill International Violin Competition. This is the seventh competition, and I'm Justine Cormack. I'm the violinist of NZ Trio, and I was a judge for the first four competitions, originally when I was a concertmaster of the APO, and since then within my role as a violinist of NZ Trio. I've been presenting the Insider's Guide throughout the competition, giving talks about all the various aspects of the competition to try and help give the audience more insight into what the competitors are going through, potentially what the judges are looking for, and answering any questions that you might have. I apologise for those of you who were in Queenstown. Some of the things I'm going to be saying today are a repeat, just to bring you all up to date. Who was in Queenstown? Oh, quite a few of you. Okay, so I'm just going to run very quickly over what we've all been part of in Queenstown to bring you all, the rest of you up to date. And then I'll talk a little bit more specifically about exactly what's happening tonight. So there were 130 applicants for this competition this year, and in December there was a judge. There were 5 judges, including myself, from Australia and New Zealand, who assessed all the tapes and chose 18 semi-finalists. We also had a list of 6 alternates. Sometimes people can't make the competition because they're either sick or another commitment, another competition sometimes. And there was one person who pulled out just a week ago, and the first alternate came, and she is one of the 6 that are playing tonight, this one here. So actually, you've probably got the names of the people you're going to be listening to, and you can also see that we're going to be getting 5 Mendelssohn trios and 1 Ravel trio. So it's going to be an interesting competition from that perspective. So then, of the 18 that came to New Zealand, we heard 2 rounds of repertoire in Queenstown. On Saturday, we heard some Bach and Mozart, and on Sunday and Monday, we've heard 4 other works, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. After tomorrow's performance, the judges will vote, and 3 people will be picked to continue to the final round, where they'll play a concerto with the Auckland Philharmonic on Saturday night. So the judges, they're an extraordinary group of violinists and musicians. I recommend you do purchase one of the programs if you can. There's a lot of information in there, and it's very interesting to see what all of these people are up to. There's Christian Altenberger from Austria, Feng Ning, who of course was our winner from 2005, James Ennis, who some of you may have heard play with APO last week, from Canada, Ida Kavavian from the USA, Dean Olding from Australia, Helena Poll is the New Zealand representative. We always have a New Zealand representative on the panel. She's the first violinist of the New Zealand String Quartet, and Dmitry Tsitkovetsky from London. And the process is outlined in your books as well, but basically it's a secret ballot voting system. People can only progress if they have a majority of votes. It's quite a complicated system, but it does work very well. And the judges are not able to discuss the candidates at all through the whole competition. I'm sure they're dying to, but they're not allowed to. So to the Queenstown round, the first round was Bach and Mozart. And for those of you who are there, I'm sure you would agree that it's a very exposing round. It's wonderful to hear all 18 in a day, but it is a very demanding repertoire to have to present the Baroque Bach and classical music from Mozart. So it's not flashy music, it's very intimate and personal. So that was an interesting insight into each of the competitors at that point. And then the second semi-final round is over 2 days, because there's a little bit more repertoire, and that really fills out a much clearer picture of each of the competitors. So they played a duo sonata, which involved collaborating with the pianist, a Paganini Caprice, which was a very virtuosic example of some of the pyrotechnics they're able to do. Jack Body, a New Zealand composer, wrote a piece especially for this competition, and we got to hear 18 versions of that, which was quite remarkable. showpiece, so again they have the opportunity to show a lot of their virtuosic technique. So at the end of that process, we really did have a good overview of all 18. Look, the pictures are all up around the hall here. We had a really good example of their or idea of how well they can encompass a whole range of styles, and a very clear idea of their technical ability. Of course, all 18 are extraordinarily high. You know, they're wonderful violinists, so we're getting down to the really fine details in terms of determining who progresses in the competition. And I think a lot of it has to do with their musical personality, and also their stage presence and their demeanour on stage certainly comes into it as well in terms of making a really convincing performance. So the repertoire that they choose is critical in terms of them providing us with the best sort of overview of each of their personal offerings. So it is interesting the various programs that each person puts together, and I'm sure the judges are able to kind of assess differently depending on what the competitors have chosen. Another aspect that they do have to watch out for, the competitors are not allowed to repeat any composer, so they do have to be quite careful at what point that they play. For example, if they wanted to do Brahms concerto, they cannot play Brahms sonata, or Mendelssohn doesn't provide a problem because there are none of the other repertoire really included Mendelssohn. That could be one of the reasons why there are more Mendelssohn, because I think 13 of the 18 had chosen to perform Mendelssohn. So it's interesting to see. Each year there are different trios, and there are different mixtures of repertoire that they've chosen. So more specifically now to the chamber music round. Just before I talk about this, we will have a chance for questions at the end of this session. So if you do have any questions in mind, just keep them in the front of your mind, and you can ask me them at the end. So this round, the chamber music round, was added to the competition in the third competition, and one of the reasons it was a very hard job for the judges to go from 18 to 3, and so we thought it would be wonderful to have an extra round in there, so coming to 6 and then 3. But it also adds another dimension to the competition, and I think really it's not unheard of to have a chamber music round in a competition like this, but it is quite special. But I think it's a really important element for any professional violinist these days, and it's very interesting reading the bios of the judges. You've got incredibly high-powered soloists in the 7 judges, but all of them are very active chamber musicians as well. So it's a really important skill that tonight gives the judges a small window into some of the aspects of that skill. So really it's about working particularly sensitively with other musicians. In Queenstown, they did have to perform duo repertoire, and to a certain extent, absolutely, there is collaborative technique required there, and they had to share the stage and share the interpretation and really be sensitive to each other. But certainly adding another person, so you've got 3 people on stage for a trio, it makes that communication and sensitivity all the more important. And it's very much a matter of coming to the performance together, and the judges will be looking to see how they respond, or especially how the competitor responds in that situation. So they each had, the 3 performers tonight each had 90 minutes to rehearse in here today. And so each work is probably about 25 minutes long. So that gives you probably the opportunity to play it through, talk about a few things, and then play that's not to say that's what they did. It would have been up to each competitor how they ran the rehearsal. But there's not a lot of time, so I mean it's from that perspective that this is more of a cursory kind of snapshot at their skills as chamber musicians. That being said, they will certainly be bringing their interpretation to tonight's performance. In that 90 minutes, they would have crystallised exactly what tempo they want to play. Then this will very much be the violinist, in this case, leading the interpretation. Without doubt, both Michael and Ashley will be trying to help each violinist project their concept of the work to us tonight. Of course, that doesn't mean that the violinist just gets to do exactly what they want to. They still need to be sensitive and work into the mix within their own interpretation. So it's incredibly important that they have a really clear understanding of how the whole piece works and how the parts fit together, because they will need to be very clear about the characters that they want to project. They'll need to convince Ashley and Michael of the way that they want to perform the work. So it's an interesting situation in that certainly any normal trio rehearsal would take a lot longer to work out how you're going to play, and it would be very much so a three-way conversation. This is going to be more of a one-way conversation getting to stage, but once they're on stage it has to be three people really working together to provide or to present a unified goal. So the other sorts of things that the judges might be looking for specifically tonight. So you've got the ensemble skills, so it's very much playing together as one. So that really does require immense sort of intuitive sensing of each other in terms of how a phrase is going to go, and also a really clear awareness of how the parts fit together. If there are, in the Mendelssohn, for example, there are many fast-running notes in the piano, as you will hear, and so the string lines often really need to sit effortlessly over the top of those lines, and so there's an intimate kind of listening going on all the time. Then there's the issue of balance, and this is very much to do with the structure of the piece as well. There'll be times when each member will have a solo line, other times when two might be sharing a line, so it's more like a duet. And then there'll be times also when the violinist is an accompanimental role. So those roles have to be switched effortlessly, and it really relies on the violinist and the competitor in this case really understanding how the roles fit together. And this is evolving, fluid kind of thing that they will need to be responding on the spot as well in terms of keeping the consideration of balance. There will be articulation. So one of the things that the two string players would have done in each session is to get a sense of how their bowings can relate. Again, there's limited time, so this sort of thing would be more refined in a normal kind of chamber music situation. But that being said, it's really important that the lines between the strings and the piano also very much so match in terms of their articulation and phrasing, and so the way that each phrase happens musically, that the three of them need to unify that. I know that Ashley, for example, has 5 different copies of the Mendelssohn, and so he is going to be using a different copy for each player so that he can write in bowings to match that player. So when Ashley
Testing.
responding to the violinist as well. I don't imagine Michael's playing from different scores, but he doesn't have the bowing issue, but there will be complications in terms of tempi and time taking and breathing that they'll need to remember each time before they come on stage what each competitor requested. So it's quite a task considering that there are 5 of the same piece. That being said, it's actually very interesting for us to hear the same piece played over and over again, as we would have all noticed in Queenstown in terms of the contemporary work. So I was trying to think of the sorts of things that you might notice or look out for when you're listening to 5 different Mendelssohns to see what the difference is. Tempo is going to be a big one, and you can be sure that the tempo that each competitor plays, or each performance of the Mendelssohn, the tempos will be what the competitor has asked for. So they'll be very much, Ashley and Michael will be very much trying to support exactly the way the violinists want to play it. I mentioned the articulation. You really could notice quite a big difference in terms of how the different violinists perform the Mendelssohn. There might be more brilliance, or there might be more lyricism. Some might play much more lyrically, but it's a pretty lyrical piece. So, and it's reasonably, or it is very standard repertoire. So, in some ways, I don't expect to hear a huge range, a vast difference in interpretation. But it will be very interesting to see how they do compare. You could also notice the role shifting that I mentioned before, in terms of how each person puts themselves into the same piece, in terms of how strong they're playing or how gently they play, the range of dynamics that they bring out. And I mean, ultimately, we're looking to be moved and for the competitor to really speak to us through the music. So it'll be very interesting to see how each performance affects you. I can say though that probably each person in the audience will have quite a different response as well, because that act of performing for people and being in an audience and receiving that performance, you're very much part of it, and your own response to the performance makes a difference as well. And this comes back to the judges. Having been on the panel myself 4 times, it always really surprises me how differently the judges vote at certain points. Unfortunately, it'd be very interesting to know which judges are voting for which candidates, but you never get to find that out. But it never ceases to amaze me how the spread, there is a spread of opinion, and this reinforces this idea that it's a very subjective thing, listening to music, and what one person really enjoys is going to be different, potentially, from the next person, which is part of the joy of music as well. It's always really reinforced for me that it's important as a musician to really present your own perspective, not to be trying to please everyone, because actually you're not going to please everyone. That being said, Feng Ning was one of those people that really the jury was completely unanimous, and I'll never forget when he won the competition in 2005. All of the semi-finalists leapt to their feet, and it was a really amazing thing to see. So, then Ravel is, at the end of tomorrow, you will get to hear a different trio. So, the Ravel trio is very different from the Mendelssohn, of course. Mendelssohn was written in 1839, so sort of classical, romantic kind of language. It's very lyrical. Mendelssohn's well known for his songs without words. The second movement has a beautiful lyrical song, basically, that you hear many times, and that movement moves between the instruments. And the third movement is a fantastic Mendelssohn scherzo, which always makes me think of Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a very clear example of Mendelssohn's sort of virtuosic scherzo music that can go very fast. It'll be interesting to see how the tempos that the competitors choose. But then Ravel provides a completely different language of music altogether. It was written in 1914, and so his music is very much of the Impressionist era. So the colours that he's using, I mentioned these sorts of things in Queenstown, much more tertiary, some incredibly colourful extremes, and also in terms of transparency or density of sound, you're going to get some incredible transparent colours in there. And so the technical requirements are very different. You'll hear a lot of harmonics. I didn't actually get to describe how they happen in Queenstown, so I might describe that now, because you will hear a lot of harmonics. Basically, they are sounds that sound like whistling, or they're very high whistling sounds, and they're created two ways. It's by light pressure on the string. It's at certain points on the string, halfway, quarter, then other exact divisions of the string. And the reason they create that high whistling sound, when you normally stop a string fully, put your finger right down, it makes the length of the string very exact, and the vibrations are going up and down the string at a very, very fast rate. But when you just touch the string, you have the vibrations going to the finger and turning around and coming back, but you also have them going beyond the finger to the end of the fingerboard and coming back. So you've got more than one set of vibrations going up and down the string, and somehow that means that it's to do with overtones, and that gives this beautiful high sort of whistling sound. You can also create a harmonic by stopping the string with the finger and lightly laying another finger either a fourth or a fifth above, and they create different harmonics as well. It's the same principle, in that the length of the string is determined by the lower finger, and then the light finger produces another place for the string to send vibrations up and down. So, the Ravel is one of the great piano trios, and it's incredibly challenging, especially actually for the pianist. And that goes for the Mendelssohn as well. So Michael's got an incredible job ahead of himself in the next 2 days. Actually, I didn't really officially introduce. It's Michael Hurston on the piano and Ashley Brown on cello. Ashley plays in my trio. I'm sure you're all familiar with Michael. I play with both of them, and I know for sure that the competitors are incredibly lucky to be experiencing this kind of music with them, and they will be doing everything that is possible to really support each competitor. So before I answer any questions you might have, just people invariably come up to me and say, so what are the judges looking for? And I mean, I've given a number of sessions to sort of try and give a sense of the many, many things that come into it. But if I have to crystallise it, I would say that really they're looking for a strong musical personality. And it gives me great confidence to look at the inside cover of the program book and see the 6 winners that we've had to date. Knowing all of those violinists, they're perfect examples of the type of violinist that the judges will be looking for, and that they're really complete musicians. They can absolutely do everything they need to do on the instrument technically in order to express the music, which really is fundamentally what I imagine each of the judges is looking for. That the judges themselves will have their own means of evaluating each competitor. There's no system they don't have to give marks or anything, they just have their own way of ranking or deciding between the competitors, and then the voting process at the end of each round takes care of unifying the judges in order for the results to happen. So for me, I'm looking for poetic performances, really passionate playing, but also really eloquent. I'm looking for someone with flair, but somebody who has the ability to be really intimate, and I think tonight will be a really good test for how someone can share the stage as well with other colleagues. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into what's going to happen tonight, and I welcome any questions that you might have at this point, and it can be to do with anything, preferably to do with the competition. Anybody have any? Yes? Oh, the 6 finalists. They're the 3 on the wall here, and three on the wall here. So we've got tonight, the first performer is Nicky Choi, and he's Canadian, studying at the Juilliard School. Hope I'm going to know all the details of each of these. And then second, we've got Iona Christina. No, I'm not sure how to say her last name. I haven't had to train up on that. So she's the back there. And which is she Bulgarian? Romanian. Okay. Yes. And then Natalie Lynn is one in the middle over here, and she's the New Zealand competitor in the 18. So it's wonderful that she made it up to Auckland here. And then tomorrow, Won Young-jung from South Korea.
She came in as the alternate.
Yes, I mentioned it before. Yes, she came in at the last minute, replacing somebody who was sick. Actually, Ekaterina Frolova was too sick to come. So she had a week's notice. That being said, anybody who is the first, second or third alternate, especially the first, has a good chance of coming to the competition. So I'm sure she will have been preparing to a certain extent for it. In the past, often the first alternate has done very well. If I'm correct, Joseph Spacek was the first alternate, and he won two competitions ago. And others have made it to the finals, and certainly the semi-finals here in Auckland as well. So that shows how close the 18 are, and the alternates, the 6 alternates that we choose in the prelims. And then Sarah Christian, the back there from Germany, and Boson Mo, he's Canadian as well. He's possibly studying at Juilliard as well. Anybody know? He's studying there.
So the one who came in, did she, for her audition, 130, that was different music, was it, when they sent the tapes?
Yes, so the tape round, the prelim round, where this year we had 130, they send the Bach, which they have to play in the semi-final rounds, and the repertoire choices are listed in the program. And then they have to play a Paganini Caprice of their choice, and a sonata movement. And that they have to send a video actually, but none of the judges in that stage, we're not watching the video because it's all completely anonymous, and that we don't want to know who they are, so we're listening blind. But Anne Rodder, the director of the competition, is watching the video to make sure that it correlates with the sound that we're hearing, so that they're not two different people. You know what I mean? And yeah, so we listen to as much of those recordings as possible, but by no means do we listen to a huge part of it, because we've got 130 to listen to. But we listen to what we feel is enough to get a sense of each competitor, and then we have a system to get a ranking of the 18 and the 6. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anything else?
Do you think that the original 130 people who are just listened to and not seen, are actually at some kind of a disadvantage? Because obviously one of the things is their stage presentation and how they bear up on the stage.
Yes,
whereas the one who are actually before the judges are selected, has an advantage.
Yeah, well, it's so the question's to do with whether it's a disadvantage to not be able to see the competitors in the first round, the prelim round. And without a doubt, my experience having heard the tapes, because I've done that every year, so I've heard many tapes now, and whenever I come to the semi-final round and hear the 18 live, it's a very different situation. I mean, I keep my notes from the first round, and often what I'm hearing on the tape and what I'm hearing in the semi-final round don't match that well. But I think really it's an imperfect, there's no perfect way to do it, and I think that the fact that it's blind, that we don't know who we're listening to, is very important at that initial round, for people to be sure that the judging is very objective at that point. And yeah, I definitely think it's the right way. So it doesn't disadvantage anyone in particular, because we're not seeing any of them. But of that 130, we get to 18, and then we get to see the full picture. I think it's certainly it's a successful way to do it. There's probably no perfect way, besides having 130 of them come to New Zealand. You know, but that would take a bit long and cost a bit too much.
There's a quality there in playing part.
Yes, well, this is another issue in terms of the quality of the violin. A lot of people ask me this question too, and they also want to know what instruments people are playing. And it's a complicated one as well. First of all, if you have a wonderful violin, you still need to be able to play it very well. So, but if you have a wonderful violin and you play it very well, then you're lucky, really. I kind of think of it a little as a snapshot into the real world, in that we have, I'm going to have to stop soon, am I? In the real world, some people get to play wonderful instruments and others don't. Some people can afford it, others can't. Some people are given violins, and a number of the competitors here have been given beautiful instruments to play. So, but whether they're at an advantage, it's hard to know, because I think certainly the judges understand those ins and outs, and sometimes they may think they're listening to a really real quality instrument, and it may be, obviously it's a good quality instrument, but it may not be what they think it is. And so it's a really tricky one. I would hope that the judges can listen beyond that as well. And certainly whenever you're playing an instrument, you have to just believe that it can do everything you want it to do. Yeah, so again, it's not in a perfect world, they would all have the best instruments, and maybe that would be an equal playing field, but it's hard to know. Yeah, it's probably a pretty unsatisfactory answer, but I think, you know, we have examples in this competition of people playing very valuable, wonderful instruments, and there are modern instruments here as well, and they sound fantastic as well. So, yeah, the judges really wanted to know, but then when we decided not to tell them what instruments people were playing, because it can also influence positively or negatively. You might judge somebody with a fine instrument more harshly as well, whereas the instrument itself might have some issues going on. You never know really what the computers are dealing with.
But there were the sponsors were thanked. What did the sponsors do actually? Anne Roden thanked the sponsors. I don't know what they
So there's basically all the sponsors. It's a money. Actually, Peter Lloyd might be able to answer that question in terms of the sponsors are involved in the competition in lots of different ways. Some in-kind support, some financial support. People who are hosting competitors. So their involvement in all sorts of ways. And somebody asked me about hosting in Queenstown, and I was told afterwards, oh, you should have said, you know, anybody can host. You know, I mean, if you want to be contributing or hosting, there are people you can go and talk to and honour, and you know, there are many ways that you can be involved in this competition. So I encourage you to do that too. So at the end of tonight, and also at the end of